Hello everyone, this is Karen Makuha.
This is Kelly Mangunay.
And this is Kent Hinalok, and we belong to Group 16. As we all know, communication is one of the most important aspects of society. It serves as the model and method for people to relay ideas as well as important information. But most importantly, it's the medium to which they can express themselves. There are many determinants which affect the way we, as a society, communicate. And one of the biggest among these is culture.
In this presentation, we will be exploring the cultural determinants of communication. You might be wondering, cultural determinants? What does that mean? Well, in simple terms, it's about how our culture, our beliefs, values, norms, rules, basically our whole way of life, shape the way we interact with each other. Now, why is it important to learn and understand how culture shapes communication? Okay, imagine being in another country and you don't know anything about this country, you don't know the language its people speak, and you don't know anything about its culture. Understanding these cultural determinants is key to effective communication, especially in our global village. Alright, so to help you gain a better grasp of the concept of cultural determinants of communication, we're going to discuss each cultural context. These are language, norms, values and beliefs, historical context, and societal structures. First off, let's talk about language. Language is not just about the words we use, but also how we use them. The way we speak, the idioms we use, these are all steeped in our culture. In some cultures, being direct is appreciated, while in others, it's all about being subtle and reading between the lines. Next up is social norms. These unwritten rules of society play a huge role in communication. For instance, in some cultures, maintaining eye contact is seen as confidence, but in others, it's viewed as disrespectful. Understanding these nuances is very crucial in effective communication. We also have values and beliefs. These shape what we say and how we say it. Ever noticed how some topics are taboo in certain cultures but open for discussion in others? That's our cultural compass at work. And then there's historical context. Our past, both personal and collective, influences our communication in profound ways. If you know where someone's coming from, you understand their perspective better, right? And finally, societal structures. They're like the scaffolding that supports the way we communicate. Think about the hierarchy in workplaces or family dynamics. These structures dictate not just what we say, but who gets to say it and who listens. So there you have it, language, social norms, values, beliefs, historical context, and societal structures. They are not just parts of our culture. They shape our communication in ways we might not even realize. Now, moving on to the next section, we'll talk about the impact of political and cultural theories on communication. So, by now, you should already have a good understanding of our topic, right? Now, let's continue to strengthen this understanding. I'm pretty sure you already know about the four theories of the press, namely the authoritarian theory, the libertarian theory, the social responsibility theory, and the Soviet totalitarian theory. These theories, outlined by Siebert and his colleagues, reflect different cultural and political environments and their impact on mass media. Now, let's talk about each one of them. First, we have the authoritarian theory, commonly seen in contexts where the state exercises tight control over the media. You know how Hitler and Mussolini controlled the press in Germany and Italy during World War II? The media were not allowed to comment, discriminate, or stand against the government. These are examples of the authoritarian theory. Next is the libertarian theory, which is the opposite of authoritarian theory. It advocates for minimal state interference, valuing individual freedom and the free flow of information. Think of it as the free speech model, common in many Western democracies. Then there's the social responsibility theory. This one's a bit of a middle ground. It recognizes freedom of the press, but also insists on its obligation to serve the public good. It's like saying, sure, speak freely, but remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Finally, the Soviet totalitarian theory, which integrates media directly into the government structure with the purpose of furthering the goals of the state, often found in more autocratic regimes. So, why are we talking about these theories? It's because each of these theories, from authoritarian to libertarian to social responsibility and Soviet totalitarian, provides a unique lens through which we can view the relationship between communication, culture, and politics. They highlight the profound impact of cultural and political determinants on communication models and practices. By understanding these theories, we gain insight into the diverse ways that societies approach communication and the underlying cultural values that shape these approaches. Now, I'll pass it over to Kelly. Over to you, Kelly.
Thank you, Karen, for those insightful perspectives. In the previous section, we explored the diverse cultural elements that shape communication. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about development communication. This concept is pretty fascinating because it's not just about how we communicate, but it's deeply rooted in cultural sensitivity and tailored to specific regional needs. So, what exactly is development communication? It's a unique approach that emerged as a response to the limitations of traditional communication models, particularly in developing countries. As mentioned in the fifth theory of the press, development communication is tailored to the social and political structures of the developing world, considering its specific global environment. It's all about understanding that the way we communicate can't be one size fits all, especially when dealing with diverse cultural backgrounds. This approach is a great example of how cultural determinants play a significant role in shaping communication practices. It's not just about what is said, but also how, why, and under what circumstances it's communicated. Development communication is grounded in the belief that communication should lead to social transformation and development, addressing basic needs and fostering growth. This is highlighted in the fifth theory of the press, where the focus is not just on spreading information, but on creating meaningful social change. What's really interesting about development communication is how it adapts to and is shaped by cultural determinants. This isn't just a theoretical idea, it's practical and actionable. For instance, in a region where oral traditions are strong, development communication might focus more on radio broadcasting or community storytelling sessions. This sensitivity to cultural nuances ensures that the communication is effective and resonates with the audience. To sum it up, development communication shows us how crucial it is to consider a cultural determinants in communication. It's not just about sending a message, it's about making sure that message is received, understood, and able to make a real impact. And that's something worth thinking about as we continue to explore the fascinating world of communication. Values in social political framework and communication. First off, let's talk about these values. Development communication isn't just about passing information. It's driven by values like social transformation, participation, responsibility, education, practicality, and ephemeralization. These aren't just fancy words, they have real cultural significance. For example, in many cultures, the idea of social transformation is closely tied to community development and progress. It's about using communication to not just inform, but to uplift and empower communities. Now, how do these values connect to the broader theme of culture influencing communication? Well, let's think about it. In a culture that values participation, communication methods will likely encourage dialogue and community involvement. This could mean more town hall meetings or interactive radio programs where people can have their say. It's not just about top down communication, it's a two-way street. Education is another big one. In cultures where education is highly valued, development communication might focus on informational campaigns, workshops, or educational programming. It's all about using communication as a tool to enlighten and educate, aligning with the cultural emphasis on learning and knowledge. And let's not forget about practicality and ephemeralization. These values are all about efficiency and effectiveness, which can be crucial in resource limited settings. It's communication that gets straight to the point and makes the most out of available resources, something that's highly valued in many cultures. To wrap it up, these values in development communication are direct manifestations of cultural determinants in communication. They're not just abstract concepts, they're rooted in the cultural fabric of society. They shape not only what is communicated, but how it's done, ensuring that it resonates with and is relevant to the audience. So, as we see, culture isn't just a backdrop, it's a driving force in shaping communication methods and objectives. Interdisciplinary perspectives on communication and culture. Let's start with economics. Now, you might be wondering, What does economics have to do with communication? Quite a bit, actually. Economics isn't just about money, it's about how resources are allocated and used, which is deeply influenced by cultural values. For instance, in a culture where resource sharing is a norm, communication strategies might focus more on community benefits and collective good. This perspective is supported by insights from environmental communication, which discusses how communication influences economic behaviors like consumer habits and trade practices in different cultural contexts. Now, on to psychology. This is a field that really gets into the nitty gritty of how we think and behave. In terms of communication, psychology helps us understand how cultural norms and values shape our perception and processing of information. This ties back to our earlier discussion on development communication, where we talked about how communication needs to resonate with the audience's cultural context. Psychological theories contribute to this understanding, especially in how cultural norms and values are transmitted and reinforced through communication. Then there's physics. You might be scratching your head on this one, but hear me out. Physics, especially concepts like signal transmission and information entropy, can be parallel to communication theory. In cultural terms, the efficiency and clarity of communication are crucial, especially in areas like technology development. This aspect is subtly hinted at in participatory filmmaking, where the focus is on how different cultural entities produce documentaries with varying representations of the same reality. Cybernetics is another interesting angle. It deals with systems, control, and communication in machines and living beings. In cultural terms, it relates to how societies process information and adapt to change. This is pretty relevant to what we've been talking about in terms of development communication, where the focus is on adapting communication strategies to cultural realities. Lastly, there's biology, particularly evolutionary biology, which looks at how communication behaviors have developed and adapted over time. This ties back to our earlier discussions about how cultural traits and practices are passed down and modified through communicative processes. To sum it all up, these interdisciplinary perspectives really enrich our understanding of cultural determinants in communication. They show us that communication isn't just about the message, it's about how that message fits into a broader cultural and disciplinary context. So, as we delve deeper into the world of communication, it's important to remember that it's a field influenced by a myriad of factors, from economics to biology, all contributing to how we understand and engage with different cultures. Now, let's transition to Kent. Take it away, Kent.
So, all right. After exploring how different academic disciplines illuminate the cultural determinants of communication, let's switch gears a bit, and delve into something quite tangible yet often overlooked, including me. It's space. Specifically, we're going to talk about proxemics and its role in communication. And I know this might be a new term for some, especially me, before we doing the presentation, but it's all about how space speaks in the language of culture. So, yeah, what is proxemics exactly? It's basically the study of how space is used in communication. Think about the physical distances between people as they interact, and how spaces in homes or offices are arranged, and even how cities are planned. This concept was coined by Edward Hall, and it's a game changer in understanding nonverbal communication. But now let's connect this to cultural communication. Why does it matter? How does it relate? Remember when we talked about cultural elements like social norms and values in section 2? Well, proxemics plays right into that. Different cultures have different norms for personal space. For instance, in some cultures, close physical proximity is the norm and signifies trust or some kind of intimacy. In others, more space might be preferred, reflecting values like individualism or personal privacy, like what we live in today. This aspect of proxemics is highlighted in the corner office as a status symbol in an academic institution. A study in proxemics, that's quite a long title, but it's basically the reading resource, which discusses how space functions as a status symbol in specific cultural settings. But proxemics isn't just about personal space. It also extends to how public spaces are designed and used. Think about town squares or community centers or even the layout of a marketplace. Even malls, actually can facilitate or hinder communication and interaction. These spaces reflect and reinforce cultural values or norms, a physical embodiment of a community's way of life. That's basically culture. So, to wrap it up, proxemics is a clear example of how physical space is a cultural determinant of communication. It's not just about words and gestures, it's about how the spaces we inhabit and interact within influence the way we communicate. So next time you're in a busy street or a quiet library or somewhere, or even just sitting across from someone, remember the space around you is saying something, and it's deeply, deeply rooted in culture. In this section, we're going to delve into the world of media and film, specifically looking at forms like reality TV and cinema direct, and how they reflect and are shaped by cultural context. Let's talk about reality TV. This genre has become a global phenomenon, and it's fascinating to see how it mirrors cultural values and norms. Each version of a reality TV show in different countries is not just about language, it's a cultural adaptation. The way participants interact, the type of challenges they need to face, and even the humor, and even the slangs or the nonverbal languages. It's all steeped in cultural nuances. And this form of media reflects societal values and in turn influences them. It's a two-way street. And now, Cinema Direct, on the other hand, offers a more unfiltered glimpse into reality. And yeah, that's the keyword, unfiltered. No acting, no filters, basically. So, originating as a style that emphasizes direct engagement with subjects and spontaneous observation, Cinema Direct has been particularly significant in the context of developing countries, as highlighted in participatory filmmaking section in our reading resources. It's about capturing life as it is, without the frills. Basically, again, the unfiltered reality. And this approach provides a unique perspective on the cultural realities of different societies, offering insights that are often unrepresented in mainstream media. Now, let's link this back to development communication. Both reality TV and cinema direct are prime examples of how media can serve as a tool for cultural reflection and engagement. They demonstrate how media in its various forms is not just a passive conveyor of information, but an active participant in the cultural dialogue. These forms of media have the power to both reflect and shape cultural norms and values, thus the cultural determinants. So to wrap this up, what we see in these media forms is a clear illustration of how deeply media as a form of communication is influenced by cultural context and determinants. Whether it's the dramatized or culturally tailored scenarios of reality TV or the raw, unscripted authenticity of cinema direct, these media forms are powerful mirrors and molders of culture. They remind us that in the world of communication, really understanding the cultural backdrop is the key to understanding the message itself. Moving on from our last discussion on development communication and its adaptation to cultural determinants, let's now delve into another intriguing area, or let's talk about environment, or basically environmental communication from a cultural perspective. Now, environmental communication is an incredibly fascinating field, especially for people like us that are relatively progressive. It's not just about spreading awareness on environmental issues. It's also deeply intertwined with cultural context. It's outlined in the reading material, Environmental Communication, that this form of communication goes beyond mere information exchange. It's a dance of conveying knowledge, beliefs, and values within living systems. Or, yeah, the dynamic systems of culture. Now, you might be wondering what exactly does environmental communication reflect and is influenced by cultural values? This was also a question that I asked myself as well. Well, it's quite straightforward when you think about it, or when I tell you about it. Different cultures have unique ways of interacting, right? And these interactions are based on deeply ingrained cultural values. For instance, in many indigenous culture, there's a strong emphasis on the interconnectedness of all living things, a concept that is frequently highlighted in their environmental communication strategies. When we link this back to our earlier discussions, particularly on the interdisciplinary perspectives in development communication, we see a similar pattern here. Environmental communication isn't just about ecology, it's about understanding how different cultural backgrounds perceive and also interact with nature. This understanding is especially crucial for crafting messages that resonate with diverse cultural groups. So to wrap this section up, environmental communication is a prime example of how cultural determinants shape communication. It's about recognizing and respecting the diverse ways in which various cultures understand and relate to their natural surroundings. This form of communication plays a vital role in fostering sustainable practices and promoting a harmonious relationship between humans and environment without going too offensive and overly righteous. But we need to understand the different cultures as well. Now, after diving into the complicated world of environmental communication and seeing its cultural underpinnings, it's finally time to bring everything together and see the bigger picture in our conclusion. So, we started by understanding the diverse cultural elements that influence communication, things like language, social norms, and beliefs, as discussed in the initial sections. Then we move into development communication. Remember how we talk about its unique approach, focusing on cultural sensitivity and addressing specific regional needs, and how space actually also speaks. We also touch on environmental communication and so how cultural values shape our understanding and interaction with the environment. Throughout our discussion, we've seen the interconnectedness of all these topics, whether it's development communication, adapting to cultural needs, or environmental messages resonating with cultural values. The common thread has been the significant role of culture in shaping communication. So the takeaway from our report is clear. To communicate effectively on a global scale, we must understand, respect, integrate, and consider the cultural determinants that not only define our communication, but also our world. And that's the end of our report. We hope we shed some light on the importance of understanding and integrating these cultural nuances in our global communication practices. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us on this actually quite fascinating learning experience. And yeah, that's it for Group 16. Group 16 out.